Hey, it's Adam Lugsch-Tehle, existential and lifestyle coach. Have you ever felt like fear and shame are pulling the proverbial strings in your relationships? Today, I want to take a deep dive into toxic shame and a common topic right now of discussion, which is codependency. Have you ever felt a tight knot in your stomach before making something as simple as a phone call, or you recently hesitated to speak up in a meeting because you felt the need to silence your true opinions? You're not alone. Over 50%, half of us have experienced similar pangs of self-doubt, toxic shame, the feeling of being inherently flawed or unacceptable. In the video today, we want to outline some key steps to transform shame and validate your needs and cultivate authentic and resilient connections. But first, have you ever reflected even on how fear and shame silently influence your actions? Because I still vividly recall feeling that familiar knot in my stomach before calling a friend, for example, to make weekend plans. This small voice in my head would whisper something like, "You're bothering them, you're a nuisance," right? Planting seeds of apprehension. It's likely that you've had similar experiences too. Think of an occasion recently when you hesitated, for example, to ask for help. You feared criticism if you appeared incompetent, so you're not going to ask for it. Or times when you hid your true needs or your interests as you were nervously scanning signals of acceptance. Our intimate relationships often bear the brunt of these habitual defenses. This fear of judgment, this fear of rejection, leads us to carefully monitor our behavior, and we begin to kind of tiptoe around our partners or tiptoe around our friends, distorting the truth to avoid possible shame. We silence our needs. We manipulate outcomes. We withdraw entirely from relationships. Why? Why do we allow fear and shame to direct our actions like that? Well, let's explore how these instincts may have almost protective origins, if you will, in childhood. Visualize a young girl afraid to ask for help with homework because she fears criticism if she appears not smart enough. Or picture a little boy hiding his creative interests, who's nervously kind of scanning for signals of acceptance from his parents and his peers. Boys aren't creative? Of course they are. Come on. Our coping strategies and defenses often develop early on in life, almost as ways to guard against shame, to guard against judgment or rejection and getting kicked out of the tribe, so to speak. Children naturally seek positive attention. They seek affection from their caregivers. And when these core emotional needs go unmet, we quickly learn to silence and or distort our feelings and our needs. Listen, studies show that over 60% of adults link their codependent behaviors with childhood emotional trauma. Unmet developmental needs for safety, for attention, for affection, they start to plant the seeds for people like people pleasing or outbursts of anger or withdraw from those adult relationships. The seeds planted. So let's reflect. What about your caregivers? Were they attentive? Were they attuned to your emotional world as a child? Did you feel safe confiding the worries in them or asking for help? For many of us, the answers point to childhood emotional neglect. The insecure child within still fears that rejection if we freely voice those needs, freely voice those opinions. Well, gradually we learn to tiptoe around other people as a way to feel safe, as a way to be accepted. But this comes at a tremendously heavy cost, limiting vulnerable communication. Have you ever noticed yourself, for example, manipulating or avoiding a particular connection with a friend or a loved one? Think of that friend, for example, who constantly lends money, but never directly asks for repayment. Or think about the spouse who's hiding these minor mistakes around the house, fearing intense criticism from their partner. These are common examples of how past emotional neglect influences our habits today. Childhood coping strategies, they persist. They cause us to constantly scan for signals that we are flawed, that we are unworthy in some way. We carefully monitor our behavior to avoid that rejection, but we don't have to be stuck. We don't have to be stuck in these defense patterns and mechanisms. So the next time you ask, why do fear and shame have such a tight grip on my actions? Remember, it could be for good reason, because these emotions are deeply rooted survival instincts from your childhood. But we can break free. We can break free from this cycle by building self-awareness. The first step in anything involves noticing, in this case, when shame takes over, for example, and responding with self-compassion rather than with self-criticism or self-contempt. The tool that I turn to in these moments is called Visualize the Inner Child. It comes from our friends at the Positive Intelligence community. First, I want you to picture your inner child acting out of self-protection. And then second, envision an adult who is ready to listen and comfort that child. Third, ask yourself, what would be the most loving and the most compassionate thing you could say to yourself, this child, in this situation? It's that simple. As we notice these habitual defenses, we can gradually replace them with healthy self-care, with vulnerability. We can start to embrace all the parts of ourselves, even those unsure defensive bits. Listen, it's time. It's time to embark on a journey of healing from codependency. This journey begins by validating our needs, validating our boundaries, and validating our emotions. And things often shamed in childhood, that's what we're working on now. Practice expressing those feelings, asking directly for what it is that you need. As we unsettle these old habits, intimacy and trust can thrive in our relationships. With this self-awareness, we can respond with compassion when childhood shame or codependency naturally arises. And then over time, we'll build the resilience by fully embracing our inner world, our needs, and importantly, our imperfections. The pathway leads to more mutually supportive relationships, with I think you're here for, where we can show up authentically. It offers freedom from undue responsibility and people pleasing. Let's put that aside. We unwind these assumptions that self-sacrifice equals love and belonging, and that everybody else should be more like us. In short, toxic shame and codependent behaviors, they often originate in childhood. In childhood as ways to guard against criticism and just to simply feel safe. Habitual emotional defenses, they persist all the way into our adulthood, causing us to constantly scan for rejection and at worst manipulate relationships. By replacing self-judgment with self-compassion, we can unravel those old survival instincts. We cultivate emotional resilience by embracing vulnerability and directly communicating our needs. These key steps help transform feelings of unworthiness into authentic self-acceptance. I hope that you found this video's ideas on transforming shame and codependency empowering, and for some of you, inspirational, because you deserve emotional freedom, you deserve acceptance. Please share your reflections and success stories in the comments below if you're moved to do so. And don't forget to take a deep breath when difficult emotions arise, because you've got this. Bring it on. Obstacles make us stronger. Here is to much happiness on the journey of overcoming shame and cultivating self-compassion. And here is to living unstoppably free together today.